Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Okay, we're moving on to Article 11, to hear the reports of the Town Fire District Number 3 and take action thereupon. Cole, is there a report you want to say verbally or just refer to people in the town report?
I think we've written in the town report that reflects.
Okay, great. Then we will move on to Article 12, to see whether Town Fire District Number 3 shall authorize and instruct its Prudential Committee and Treasurer to borrow money if necessary to meet current expenses on the credit of the district into anticipation of the collection of taxes and or the receipt of any state or federal funds. What is your pleasure?
Katie Dearborn, I move Article 12 as printed.
Katie Dearborn has moved Article 12 to see whether the Town Fire District Number 3 shall authorize and instruct its Prudential Committee and Treasurer to borrow money if necessary to meet current expenses on the credit of the district in anticipation of the collection of taxes and or the receipt of any state or federal funds. Is there a second? Kevin Hughes has seconded Article 12. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 12, as I just read, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Article 12 passes. Article 13, to see if the voters of the Town Fire District Number 3 will raise and appropriate the sum of $317,800 to pay the indebtedness and other general expenses of the district for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Katie Dearborn, I move Article 13 as printed.
Katie Dearborn has just moved Article 13 to see if the voters of the Town Fire District Number 3 will raise and appropriate the sum of $317,800 to pay the indebtedness and other general expenses of the district for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024. Any questions? Comments? Yes. John Ewald back there.
Is there a fund balance for the fiscal year ending in 22?
So our audit that had been completed was in draft form. The audit company that we use has a tendency not to actually turn around our audit very quickly. What I can speak to is the capital reserve fund and what we have in there and what that looks like, ending 22. But I don't have any specific numbers other than that one piece of our capital reserve, just because we follow that fairly closely, especially because over the last year there were some things that transpired. We had originally planned to get a loan for a rescue truck. We were able to secure the chassis of the truck, but the company that's outfitting it for us has not completed that work. So the loan payment that we had allocated as a part of our budget was never paid out. So that was then moved to our capital reserve as well. So I do have some figures on the capital reserve fund if that's what you're looking for in particular.
Well, I think in particular it would be nice to be able to see more than what you're giving us. I don't know if that's a question of an auditor getting them to get it in on time. It's really been 8 months since the fiscal year is over.
Right.
And, I think you guys do a great job. It's just that in the town report, it would be nice to know that you have like $4,000 you're spending on streetlights. I'm curious, did you spend $4,000 on streetlights? Or was it only $3,500? Yeah. So that's kind of my take on it, that's all.
Point noted.
Thank you.
You absolutely can access a copy of the audit from the town office. The administrative assistant does have those. Unfortunately, it's in draft form. We haven't gotten the final back from him at this point. Typically what we do, John, is we do have an amendment that's kind of back there that's printed out. Unfortunately, that didn't happen this year, so I apologize, but certainly the information is available. And if you stop by the town office, I can make sure that there's a supply that's printed that will give you those exact numbers. I will tell you that we work very closely to our budget. The budget that we create is pretty much what we stick to. There are some end of year, adjustments that are oftentimes done in just looking at, any particular fund balance and what it looks like for a line item. But I will tell you we're pretty spot on. So I welcome you to go and grab one of those. I'll make sure that they're printed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote on Article 13, which reads, to see if the voters of the Town Fire District Number 3 will raise and appropriate the sum of $317,800 to pay the indebtedness and other general expenses of the district for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion carries. Okay, going on to Article 14. To transact any other business proper to be brought before the Town Fire District Number 3 meeting. Is there any other business? Yes, Mr. Ewald.
So speaking of solar panels, have the fire district ever thought about putting solar panels on the fire station?
Yeah, I will tell you, we actually had a recent discussion about that. And so I think that that's some planning that we're looking at. There are a couple of things I actually would like to address that kind of happened over the last year. I thought there'd be a little more discussion under the budget dollar amount. So if you don't mind, John, I'm going to kind of spin this conversation into just really a summary of kind of where we are as the Prudential Committee, and that will give a little insight into your question, comment. Over the last year, we have experienced a record number of calls. We did need to take a look at our budget so that we could increase the mileage because we have a lot of participation amongst the volunteers. We additionally have a new reporting system that's required of us so that we can get the number of fire calls to the state appropriately. So there is an additional $3,500 expense that we have in doing that in order to just be compliant. We were able to secure some money through the ARPA fund, which has been a really nice relationship between the Prudential Committee, the chief, and the town and the committee that's administering that. We were able to get a new generator, we got a new washing machine, and additionally we got some new gear for our guys. ARPA funds are still available, so the last meeting that we had a discussion about our building. We had a discussion briefly about solar, and any improvements that really can be done to that building with the ARPA funds potentially to limit the amount that taxpayers would have to make as a contribution to it. So I think, over the next year, we certainly will look into the building, any kind of solar. Our electricity costs are high because of our heating in the building and our cooling in the building, along with, other electricity expenses. So that was a line item that did go up that we discussed the solar component when we were looking at that specific item. So I hope that answers your questions. We do have meetings typically once a month. They are warned, anyone is welcome to attend them. It's pretty impressive the number of volunteers that we have. I know that none of us want to be recipients of their service, but it's really refreshing to know that we've got the number of people out there supporting us. And I'm really proud of what Cole does and the budget that we come back with. There are some real expenses that we have no control over. One of our largest expenses is our mutual aid, our 911 dispatching. There's no way around it. It's hovering around $50,000 a year, and that chunk of money that we have to pay out is pretty extensive. So. Otherwise, we're going to keep working on our rescue truck, which hopefully will be outfitted this year, hopefully before we come and see you next year for a new budget. Otherwise, we continue to put some money in our capital reserves because we do have our eye on a new engine probably in the next, 5 to 7 years. So that's all I have. Cole, do you have anything you want to add?
That pretty much sums it up, yeah. We're being just as frugal as we can, but in 2022, we had 498 calls. So 67 calls in the month of December. So we've really worked hard, and I want to thank all the taxpayers that support us and the volunteers for the department.
One other quick question.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we paid for a study to see about how the, I think it was the upstairs of the firehouse. Was
Yeah.
that done, and was there any results?
Yeah, so that was done. It was done by a gentleman over in the Dover area. Basically, it indicated to us that the upstairs, which is what we were kind of looking at, which is unfinished, we were looking at sleeping quarters, kind of what that could look like. The plan that he came back with was pretty extensive, and there was a lot of cost behind it. So at our last meeting when we were discussing the building, we actually discussed that report and revisiting it, but maybe looking to make some changes to any of his recommendations or querying him, because the cost that was involved in making the changes that he thought appropriate was really pretty cost prohibitive in my eyes.
Well, thanks for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the Prudential Committee? Okay, thank you, Prudential Committee, and thank you all volunteer firefighters and EMT folks. We will move right on to the town meeting. So I'm going to ask the select board members to come forward. Great. Okay. I'll now open the town district meeting and start with Article 15 to hear the reports of the town officers and take action thereupon. Any words you'd like to say, Select Board? Jason, anything about town reports you'd like to say under Article 15?
Town report, no. Not that I have personally. I'm not a very good public speaker, so bear with me. I'm your current chair. I'd like to thank Kevin for his support last year. Whole board, actually. Craig for almost 20 years of service. Chip with Nimerick for helping us out. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. It's not an easy job, and I just want to thank everybody for their support.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Moving on to Article 16. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster authorize total general fund expenditures for operating expenses of $2,632,577, of which $2,099,397 shall be raised by taxes and $533,180 by estimated revenue for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024. What is your pleasure?
I move Article 16 as written.
Okay, Kevin Hughes Mark moves Article 16 as written. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster authorize the total general fund expenditures for operating expenses of $2,632,577, of which $2,099,397 shall be raised by taxes and $533,180 by estimated revenue for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024. Is there a second?
Katie Dearborn, second.
Katie Dearborn has seconded. Thank you. And does the board wish to say anything about this motion? No one's jumping to, so we'll move on to any questions or comments from the voters. Stephen Major.
Stephen Major. In previous years, we've had some question about whether the articles to follow in this case are included in this article for the town budget. It looks to me like this is the base town budget, and then the articles to follow each add their respective amount to that budget. Just wanted to clarify whether that is indeed the case this year. I know we had a long debate about it last year. Just wanted to figure out what the case is.
It's a good question, and
That's a good point. And the answer is yes, except in Article 19, if you pass that one, it actually reduced the taxes. So that $2,099,000 doesn't have the two that we're going to ask, but it also doesn't have the credit that we'll ask.
thank you. Any other questions? We've got a question from Susan Harlow.
Susan Harlow. The audit is not complete yet, is that correct? And so usually in the audit, that's where we had the information on the reserve funds. So my question is there any money in the emergency reserve fund? And if so, how much is that?
Okay, the board is inquiring. Any?
So we do have Chip here from NIMRIC to answer any of the specific money questions on that. And you're correct, it's not available. The audit is not done, but it's not a full audit. It's a review year audit. So
Yeah, but it
doesn't make it any less important, but
But it
it's
has the information on the.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, and so you're asking whether Chip might be able to
I believe so.
answer that. And unless there's any objection, because Chip is not a voter, town voter, but unless there's any objection, I'm going to ask Chip to talk about that reserve fund.
Chip Stearns from NIMRIC. I just want to make sure you're asking about what is labeled as emergency management fund?
No.
Which one?
I think we call it the Emergency Reserve Fund, right? That's the official name that we set up a couple of years ago.
Would that be the contingency?
Probably. Not the
Okay.
rainy day.
Not the rainy day.
No. Try contingency and see how that works.
Okay, contingency fund has nothing in it because last year you voted to move $150,000 towards FEMA. Okay, is that the fund?
I'm assuming we spent that.
Yes. By
Just curious.
public vote, we moved 250,000, 150 of it from contingency.
Okay, and so that zeroes it out at this point.
That is gone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments regarding Article 16? Yes, John Ewald.
Yes, I'm looking for the end of the fiscal year, how much cash we had on hand, because normally this is something that we get in our town report. You know, just, so those are the questions I have, because you can go through the town report and you can find out your, questions you have and see if you can get the answers. So I guess that would be what was our cash balance at the end of the fiscal year?
Okay, the board is very any answer to it?
I would address that to Chip as well.
Okay.
So there's a relative easy question. However, it's complicated by, we have lots of cash, almost $3 million. However, we have a lot of it restricted. So is your question, how much is available in, if you will, cash for general fund and highway operations? Is that your question?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay. So, during this last year, we actually, the town broke the general fund into two funds so that we have general operations and highways separated. Okay? So within the general fund, at the end of the fiscal year 22, there's $155,650.95 in what would be cash available. And in the highway fund, $73,055.61 in cash. So, is that sufficient for your answer? Because I said we got almost $3 million in cash. We have a lot of ARPA money, a lot of reserve for paving, a lot of reserve for the garage, several pockets out there of committed money. So when you ask the question, how much cash do we have? That's a loaded question. I can tell you how much is in the banks, but not how much is available to use as a resource for offsetting taxes. I think those are two different questions, and I'm thinking you're wanting the taxes one.
Well, I think my basic thing would have been nice to have an annual report so I could see it. Like I would want to know what was.
Microphone.
It would be. I mean, I guess get back to the point, it would be nice that it was in the report. I would like to know what's in the reappraisal fund. Yep. Stuff like that. But so I guess I'll wait till next year.
Okay.
I can answer the reappraisal because I know that.
Go.
Reappraisal, $187,381.28.
Okay, and thank you, Chip. Any other questions? Stephen Major over here.
Stephen Major. Last year, I believe we had a lot of discussion about a town garage and redoing or remaking a town garage. But it wasn't a warrant article, so we couldn't move forward on it then. Here we have a mention of funds for town garage. So is there now there's no article here about it, but is there a plan to be saving money for it, or what's the story now?
Question about the town garage.
So there was a loose committee that had met several times, looked at the garage we had, came up with numbers of what it would take to bring what we have up to, I don't know, up to snuff's not the right word, but so we could fit everything we own in the building. I believe it's stalled at this point. Paul Bannock was on that committee. He might know something different than I do, but we need to work on our capital improvement for all of our buildings, and that one included. Where do we want to go with it? Do we want to go a new building? Do we want to put money into the one we have? It's definitely, as soon as this meeting is over and the voting is done, that's on first thing on our list is 5-year capital plan. So I know they're remodeling part of the inside to have a bit bigger office and a bigger break room upstairs. The heating system is going to be upgraded. The wood boiler is no longer any good, but the system they're upgrading can be moved to a new building if we don't go that route. So I think it's kind of at a stalemate right now, but it's part of the plan. So
Good question. Thank you, Jason. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Susan Harlow.
Susan Harlow, I have another reserve fund question. So we're putting 15,000 into the bridge fund. What will that bring the bridge fund up to? And do you foresee that's going to be sufficient? I'm not sure the status of the bridges. Have they been pushed back, or I don't really know, but Jason?
Last I believe we heard, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, the bridge on 121 is most likely going to occur in the 2025 construction season. The cost, I have no idea what the cost is going to be, and it's going to be significantly more than what we had originally anticipated. Chip can give us that number, I believe. I want to say it's 165 is what we'll end up with, but I'm totally off the top of my head.
Jason was close, 167, 129.62. And that's today's value with this year's budget already having been traded.
Thank you.
So while we're talking about bridges, we also have two other bridges that are going to need some work in the next, I don't know, I think it's 2 or 3 years. Chuck has the reports, but the one in Westminster West on the, what do they call that? Butler's Pantry. That bridge needs a new membrane, a deck. I think it needs a deck. And the one on Goldie's Road needs, I think that's some incidental repairs, but they're all going to cost, you know, a fair bit of money. So, and hopefully they don't all come together at the same time. It seems like they might be pretty close though, so it's going to be a pretty good chunk of money to do all those.
Any other questions? Yes, looks like Paul.
Paul Bannock. This is a general question. I'm not sure who to point to for an answer, but I'll start with the select board. It's come to my understanding that there was a decision made to merge the town fund, the town budget, and the garage budget together again. I thought we made a choice and a decision last year to separate those. The basis for me asking this question is, as I said, it's come to my attention, but doesn't that raise troubles when grant monies are sought and awarded? Putting them into a town budget kind of penalizes the people who did the work, looking for the grant money in the first place, and then redirecting that money to something possibly other than what the grant was written for. If I could get the clearest, quickest answer for that, I'd be satisfied.
Can you clarify for me, Paul? So the very beginning of the question?
Simplest, I'll ask it again. Was there a merge? Did the two budgets get put together after we made a choice last year to separate them?
No, the budgets are still separated. We're still voting on the bottom line number. So I guess in the article, it does look like they've been merged, but they're not. They're still separated. The highway has their funds, general fund has their funds.
So we can clearly find a breakout.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yes, over here, Lisa.
Doesn't that mean we have to vote on the proposed highway budget if it's separate? There's no article about it.
They were never separated. They were never meant to be separated and voted on separately. It was for transparency when doing the budget, so you can see what the highway expenses are, what the highway revenue is. But it wouldn't matter. You're going to vote A and B. They're still going to meet the same, at the bottom number is still going to be the same.
So this amount in Article 16 includes the highway budget?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about Article 16? Seeing none, we will vote. Article 16, shall the voters of the town of Westminster, shall the voters of the town of Westminster authorize total general fund expenditures for operating expenses of $2,632,577, of which $2,099,397 shall be raised by taxes and $533,180 by estimated revenue for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Article 16 carries. Moving on to Article 17. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate the sum of $7,000 for the Westminster West Library to join the Catamount Library Network to pay for additional librarian hours and additional annual costs associated with joining the network? What is your pleasure?
Jason Perry, I move Article 17 as written.
Jason Perry has moved Article 17. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate the sum of $7,000 for the Westminster West Library to join the Catamount Library Network to pay for additional librarian hours and additional annual costs associated with joining the network? Is there a second? Yes, second.
Crocker, I second it.
Great, thank you, Dave. Okay, any questions or comments? Yes.
Hi, I'm Abby Wardich. I'm the board chair of the Westminster West Library, and thank you all for being here today despite this weather. We had a really big year at the library. We have officially fully launched onto the Catamount Network, which is a consortium of 23 libraries. That means that all of our members, which is everybody in Westminster and Westminster West, can go onto their computers, browse the catalogs of these libraries and reserve materials. They're brought to the Westminster West Library by a library courier, and you can come pick them up. It's a really amazing system. It's like having access to 23 libraries in one part, which is just incredible. And 2 weeks ago, we also launched our Palace app, which gives you access to audiobooks and ebooks on your phones and tablets as well. We resumed our regular scheduled programming. We've also started a couple new programs, such as Musical Mondays for kids, and a couple of Dungeons and Dragons groups for teenagers, if you like teenagers, if you're interested in that. We did have to accept the resignation of our long-term board member, President Emily Weinberg, this year. We really spearheaded us through the automation program, and she'll be sorely missed. But as we look to the future, we are beginning to refresh our strategic plan and look at what is coming next. And we'd like to hear from you guys as to how you have enjoyed the Catamount Network and what you'd like to see from us. So please feel free to stop by the library, check out some snowshoes if you want to enjoy the weather, or jigsaw puzzles if you want to stay inside. And just let us know how we're doing. This is our third year asking for the $7,000, which means that it would permanently be in the town budget moving forward. This $7,000 goes directly to covering the costs of us remaining in the Catamount Network. This includes the annual membership fee, the interlibrary courier service, and just making sure that our collection is in good condition, so as the books go around with Westminster Town meeting side of them, that we're well represented. I would just like to thank you guys for your support, and thank you for your continued support as well.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this article? Okay, then we'll move on to a vote of Article 17. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate the sum of $7,000 for the Westminster West Library to join the Catamount Library Network to pay for additional librarian hours and additional annual costs associated with joining the network? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Article 18. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 for law enforcement coverage from the Windham County Sheriff Department? What is your pleasure?
Katrina Hamilton, I move the motion as written.
Article
as written.
Katrina moves Article 18. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 for law enforcement coverage from the Windham County Sheriff Department? Is there a second?
Mr. Moderator, This is Craig.
Yeah.
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion.
I think, Craig, why don't we get a second before you, before you make an amendment? Yes.
Second.
Okay, seconded by. Okay, Craig.
I'd like to amend that we strike from the word coverage, get rid of the word from the Windham County Sheriff Department. I'd be willing to talk about that. So that basically we would still have the same motion, but it wouldn't say from the Windham County Sheriff. So we would have coverage, but we could choose who we wanted to add coverage with.
Okay.
By changing that word.
Great. Craig Allen has proposed an amendment, which, as I gather, would just strike the last 6 words from this article, and so it would read, shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 for law enforcement coverage. Is that correct?
That's correct. Obviously,
hold on a second, Craig. Let me just see whether there's a second to that amendment. Is there a second to that amendment? Katie Dearborn is seconded. Yes, Craig.
Obviously, it being an article, we had a hard time as a select board to even try to decide what to do. Last year, we did come to you. I think I was the one who even mentioned it. We wanted some money to continue on with some kind of a service. And we will tell you today that we didn't get much for service at all from the Windham County Sheriff Department. We were very unsatisfied with the coverage, as now they've not even covered the hours that we contracted them to do. Speaking of that, though, at the same time, I mean, our town population, we're getting older, we need more security, we need some kind of a law enforcement to go around and be of service. We're getting no service from the police. If we call them for emergency or anything, they don't even show up for hours. We need to be able to explore different options. I think the select board needs to look at, we contacted like even the Bellows Falls Police Department, but we need to start looking at, if they're not going to do it, what other kind of service can we get? Can we get together with other, or even hire somebody? By making an article, the money has to stay in that specific line item, so that basically we can only spend it on police enforcement or security or some kind of a way of covering our town. And that's why the article is there, because we're just not happy with the Sheriff's Department. If we could still work it out with them, that would still be an option too, but by taking the words out, we would be able to have, the select board would have more of an option of what they could do.
Thank you, Greg. So we are discussing an amendment to strike the last 6 words from the Article 18. Are there questions or comments regarding this amendment? Yes.
So there's the possibility of using Bellows Falls department, not a sheriff's department, but that's one question I have. And then the other question I have, so I guess the first question is, who else is available to provide the coverage? And the second question is, what does coverage mean? What is included in our coverage?
So as a board, we had met with the Rockingham town manager and had a very loose discussion about the possibility of paying for Bellows Falls services versus the Windham County Sheriff. We had talked at one time about even Walpole possibly. We talked about, does it make sense to hire our own person? There's other options, and as Craig said, when you take that wording out, it allows you to have those options, where if that's only the Sheriff's Department, that's only the Sheriff's Department. They're not real responsive, and when you say coverage, that's a great question. This pamphlet's in the back, and this comes off their portal, so Allie can get on it, and this is how we're built. And we don't even know when they're in town. We don't know what they're doing in town. We just get a bill. The animal control has been really good. People seem to really like her. She does a great job. But as far as coverage, it's really not great. It's really not great at all. But they still send a bill. So we're not getting what we're paying for. And last year, we went from 90,000 to 60,000, and maybe we shot ourselves in the foot with that too. I don't really know, but there's not a lot of happy people with them, and we're not happy with them, so we left it as a separate article.
Okay, any further questions? Let me go over here to Scott.
Yeah, thanks. I was just curious in this discussion. So I live in West West, and I know there was a series of like break-ins in Putney and West West a while back, and you know there would be like a trooper going down our road sometimes. There were some posts on the Facebook group. Who was that? Was that like does Putney have a police department, or was that Wyndham County Sheriff?
Putney contracts with the Sheriff's Department as well. I believe they just signed a $104,000 contract.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the time. I think it might be 40 hours. I don't really know, but it's a pretty good chunk of money.
Yeah.
And they seem happy with them, and I'm not real sure why we don't get that same.
Yeah, it would be cool though. I guess just thinking about like West West versus like this part of Westminster. You know, to make sure we had like, because Bellows Falls is much closer to here. Like if there was an issue way over there, is there someone else that we could also have in the mix? You know,
state police. If you were your house was being robbed right now, and you called state police, they might show up, but they're covering a huge area. We've been told several times that that's not what they do. They do investigations. They might do an accident on the highway. Just a general patrol. Hey, I got speeding in my neighborhood. You're not going to see them. They're not going to do it. You'd be better off. There's not a good answer to it.
Okay, I think why don't we go out back there to Mr. Stan.
Peter Stan. I'd just like to say that town meeting is customary for people to identify themselves and stand up. If they're capable of doing that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Let's go down. I think Charlie, maybe you had your...
Hi, Charlie Hutchison. I'm surprised by this $60,000 number. It seems like not a lot of money for whatever coverage means. And I'm interested to hear that you've reduced it from 90 to 60, and I'm wondering what was the thinking there? What would one expect to get for 60 grand? One wouldn't even pay the salary of one trooper for that.
I know it was reduced last year for the same reasons. That we're not getting what we're paying for, so why are we paying for it? Let's drop it down and go from there. And it hasn't gotten a lot better, so.
Okay, let's move over here to...
Basically, what he was just saying, that we originally hired the Sheriff's Department and we were going to share a full-time officer with Putney. That was the original goal. And it started out very well for the first 3 or 4 years. And they had one, we had one, they could help cover each other. And then all of a sudden the Sheriff's Department was just missing help. And we were paying and not even getting the service of a half a person. We came back to the last few years and we started out with a 40-hour, and we were already getting, like he said, 20 hours. That's why we cut it back, because they still owed us so many hours last year that at 60,000 and all the hours they didn't work, we were thinking we were still getting a full-time service. That's why we cut it to 60. Here we are at 60 again, and they still owe us hours. And that's why we're just, okay, how much longer we keep going if we're not going to get 40 hours or 30 hours or even 20 hours of service. And the service is important because the state police only investigates, like he says. The sheriff's there to monitor, look at dog problems, look at other problems, and then, like I said, they monitor our neighborhood. They should be going and seeing our town manager and say, where's the problem, where's the complaint? And when it works very well when you do have somebody.
Okay, yeah.
Chris Hines, I think, I was going to ask a question, I think it may have already been answered, and that is with the 60,000 for the coverage. It sounds like there's not really a way for the select board to measure utilization in terms of what that is, like regular reports that would be tied to these expenditures or this salary. I also noticed there's two very tiny items in the budget on a related note, and that would be maybe 5,000 mental health and the Wyndham County Youth Services. So I'm thinking about obviously the collaboration of law enforcement where young people's lives or issues are concerned. So is it the case then that it's not possible to tie specific utilization expectations with hours or other things to the budget without either a liaison or just total trust for what essentially is like a monopoly over law enforcement?
I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know. My feeling is when the sheriff signs into Westminster, the first call they should make is to town hall. Where's the problems? Who's been calling? Is it this road? Is it that road? And concentrate there first. This log, patrol Route 5. What does that mean? You stopped on Route 5 and sat there for an hour and a half? Did you just drive down Route 5? There's not a lot of explanation to it. People just aren't happy.
So the board is well aware of their expectations for how these things are utilized, and I appreciate that you're paying attention to that.
Before my time, as Craig said, the sheriff used to come to a meeting every once in a while. Hey, how's it going? What do you guys need? Are we doing all right? I haven't seen one in 2 years, unless we invited him, and it was Mark himself. So, the communication could be better too on everybody's part. But when we'll call to serve papers or something like that. You can't get them to do anything. A traffic stop, now they're making money on a traffic stop, so they might do that. They'll be patrolling, they'll sit on back Westminster Road because they're going to make money on it. So.
Okay, any further questions? Stephen Major, you've had your hand up for a while.
Stephen Major. Just noting on page 12, there's salary for animal control officer of $7,400. I don't know if this is the sheriff's department person, but as a large departmental veterinarian, I've been working with the sheriff's department animal control officer. She does a super job.
Ashley?
Yes, and she is a sort of person who works collaboratively with the people who have, her neighbors who are questioning what's going on, etc., and keeps everything low-key and gets the animals what they need. So that little bit is working well. I don't know whether that falls under the animal control officer. Stan, you're shaking your head no.
I believe they're totally separate.
So if we hire Ashley, that's great from a veterinary point of view. And I know she's part of the sheriff's department. That's the only part of the sheriff's department I have an interaction with, but that is a positive part. But clearly that is not the entire purpose of the contract.
Ally can confirm that people Ashley does a great job. People have a complaint, she takes right care of it, she's very cordial to people, everything is really good on that end. We just can't get the other end to.
So we have a $60,000 animal control officer. Maybe it's worth it.
Well, willing to try it.
Okay, any other questions? Or Ally, did you have anything to add to that? Okay, is there any objection to Ally speaking? Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. We are contracted for 103 hours a month for the sheriff. I have called numerous times since I've sat in the office, coming on a year now in April. It's very, very disappointing. Almost every call that I've made there's no officer on duty. And when I've asked, when there is an officer on duty, could we possibly have someone check in with us? And no. And they haven't, and I asked Mark to come to a meeting to address this, and he wasn't even apologetic. I have no horse in the race. I don't have any type of solution for you. but to me, town of Westminster deserves better. That's all.
And Ally, can you just clarify for us whether the $60,000 includes the money for the animal control officer?
I believe that's a separate item, because we don't have animal control. We had a number of people that were in town that were basically volunteering. They wouldn't submit a slip to be paid, but Ashley has done a wonderful job. We've had numerous problems with animals getting out up at Westminster Meets, and she's been right on it. And I know a lot of the residents are very, very happy with her.
Okay, good, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Hi, Jim Mendel. A question, going back to page 12, which was with that one, Stephen's question. I do see the animal control officer of $7,500 plus $500 expenses. So I guess that is separate. Makes sense. And then, but then there's $60,000 for Sheriff's Department continued service. So the article we're talking about, it sounds to me like there's the amendment issue of removing the dedication exclusively to the Sheriff's Department. That would be discretionary for the select board to shop around, so to speak. But is that an additional, if it's the same $60,000, I just don't know how to be clear about the fact that we've got it in line 157 or 8 in the budget, but also in a separate article. It sounds like we might be accidentally duplicating it, or maybe we want to and I don't understand it, which is probably a better guess.
Thank you, Jim. Clarification on the budget and this article.
Katrina Hamilton, I believe we did include it in the budget. Then we did accidentally duplicate it.
Do we have to ask Chip to look at that?
Okay, so, yeah, Chris, why don't we go, Katrina Hamilton says that this article may be a duplication of money that has already been voted for the sheriff or the police coverage. Chip, did you have something you wanted to say? No?
Yes. No.
Yes, okay. So Chip from Limerick is...
So I'll repeat Stephen Major's question that started. These separate articles are really included in showing of the budget so you have comparison. But the way the articles were presented is as if everything passed, that's how the budget was presented. Meaning the 60,000 is not duplicated, because if that number was 0 in the report and you were comparing 21 to 22 to what 23 would look like, 23 is a separate article for the 60,000. So comparing apples and oranges, we act like everything passed, including the next article, in the presentation of 23, but we asked them separately.
So you are, just to clarify, you were saying that the $2,632,577 that was just approved in Article 16 does not include the money that is in Article 18.
Does not include any of the subsequent articles.
Okay.
Any of the subsequent articles.
Okay, let's see, I'm going to ask, any further questions about this particular, yes, back there.
We're still on.
And keep in mind, we're on the amendment to the, this Article 18.
I'm Natalie Crocker, and I think it's time to call the questions because we're getting into so many tangents, it's getting hard to keep track of that we are just voting for the amendment. I think we need to do that and then discuss the whole amendment, which seems to have multiple complex flaws.
Good point. Okay, is there a second to that calling the question? Yes, second right here. Margie, thank you. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Okay, so we're going to move right into a vote on striking the last few words from this Article 18 so that it then reads, Article 18, shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 for law enforcement coverage. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Okay, so the amendment it passes, and the Article 18 now reads as printed except for the last 6 words. Any further questions about Article 18 as amended? Okay, I'll go back. Well, actually, Paul, you've had your hand up. Why don't we go back to Paul Bentley?
This is going to surprise you all, but I want to thank the select board. I have a long-standing disagreement with that coverage, and I think it's an absolute waste of money in several years' time to see a cruiser from the sheriff's department sit on the side of the road. In discussions about the school having a twin entry and safety concerns, these cars should be moving all the time, no matter what the service is or who it comes from. They do no justice to sitting on the side of the road writing tickets. They can do that while they patrol, they actually patrol, not sit and call them patrol. So thank you for opening up the discussion, making this choice, all of you. I think this is a smart move. I think this is a path forward to actual coverage in the town of Westminster, whether it be on the west side, the center, the east, wherever. If those cars are moving, there's coverage.
Thank you, Paul. Any further questions or comments? Yeah.
Natalie Crocker, and I just want to state that I'm concerned that 60,000 isn't enough. If Putney is satisfied with what they're getting and they're paying quite a bit more, I think we need to probably pass this, but continue to think about how little we are putting into this.
Thank you, Natalie. Any further comments or questions? Mr. Clark.
Kind of a long meeting, lunch, and although I'm not going to make it, someone could amend this article to include additional funding. You might possibly want to fund it at one of your previous levels of funding, and I did get a $100,000 number out there. Once we trust our school board, I think we can also trust our select board.
Hypothetical for you. Okay. Any further to Metal? Oh, well, excuse me. Why don't we just go over to Dan? Okay.
Yeah, Daniel Crocker. I did a little research on this. I talked to one of the Windham County sheriffs, and I said, this comes up. It's come up in the 80s. Here it is again. And he said, I said, we're spending so much money. What would you say we need to spend before it even works, before it's worthwhile? And he said you need at least 40 hours. So there you're looking at your $100,000. So yeah, that's right. It's either we're all in or we're not. So, along with David Clark, if we're going to have coverage, we're going to have to shell out the money, because doing it halfway, this isn't going to work. So, so maybe I should propose the amendment right now that we...
Can I give you an answer to that?
Yeah, there you go.
We did. That's the whole thing, how this started. We contracted for a full-time person. They come back after a year of not doing it, basically said, we're short-staffed, we can't get people, we don't have enough people trained. Then we even said, well, can't you split one with Putney? And then they found somebody in Putney, but they didn't find one for us. So then we said, well, the 60,000 is really more than 60,000 because they owe us all these free hours that they never covered.
I wasn't saying we should change the thing, no, not with the Wyndham County, but just overall.
But if you could find that service that we had a choice, then I would go along with any kind of amendment like that. But we've been pursuing it, and as a board, we're going like, okay, we want the service. And we have the sheriff's department owing us all these hours as it is. This really is enough money for a full-time. If they came back to us and said, okay, we're going to start to do it, we would even gone out and found the money if all of a sudden they were using more hours than what we had contracted for. But we're to a point, what she's saying, the relationship with the sheriff's department is so bad, because when we started every day, they would call in, you felt like there was somebody there looking after you. We really don't have a good relationship. So we need, as the board, I'm getting off, so they need to pursue other choices on it. And if it's got to come back, I think this town will be willing to pay a lot more money. It's just that we don't have the choice right now. And you getting on the board, that might be a good assignment for you.
I'm all for the choice. I see that. But what I'm saying is we're going to look at this. We're going to have to probably shell out a lot more money to get anything, whether it's Wyndham County Sheriff's or anything. So I just wanted to bring that up, that you're not going to get coverage to cover anything for 60 grand. It's going to have to be more at some point in time, no matter who does it.
Okay, thanks, Dan. We've beat around this for a while. Any further thoughts? Mr. Mehta.
Yeah, I don't want to beat this to death either, so I'm going to be short, but I voted for the amendment to remove the restrictions to sheriff only, to loosen that up, and I intend to vote for the $60,000 on this motion. But when I look at the budget, it's real clear to me that line 158, $60,000 is part of the total. And it says continued service sheriff's department. And I would simply suggest that this budget having been approved, and this amended motion, if it is approved, that the sense of this meeting is that $120,000 is not too much, and that it shouldn't necessarily go to the sheriff's department. I don't know if you would have the authority to change it based on how the wording of 158 is, but I'm neither an accountant nor an attorney, so it just looks to me like we want to avoid future confusion, but at the same time, we do need more service if we can get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Okay. Does the select board have anything to respond? No? Okay. All right. Mr. Ewald.
I'm just confused now. Did we already vote for the 60,000 or not? I thought Jim said that he thought we did.
No. We have
in our other budget.
It's not my position to come to conclusions, but I will point out that we have gotten a mixed answer on that question. And Jim is very clear about what he's observing from the town report and from the proposed budget. Chip from Limerick is quite clear that that is not the case, and I'm not sure what the select board has on that question. It is a confusing point. Yes.
And then I guess one other comment was the sheriff always came to town meeting to defend his budget. And he's not here today, right?
It's snowing.
Just a point. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? And Chip, is there anything further further you have to clarify about whether this money has already been, $60,000 has already been approved or not?
It has not.
It has not. You're still clear on that. Okay. All right, yes.
Margie Ferry, I know we already approved the budget, but in the future, maybe that should be the last article. The total budget should be the last article, and we would do the beginning things first. Does that make sense to everybody? That way we wouldn't have this problem. Like, we've approved the budget, but then we are doing these little pieces that are within it. Why don't we put that in the last article?
That is what the school board did.
Yeah.
Okay. Further questions? Yes, Charlie Hutchinson. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm Rachel Cohen. If you add the number on the bottom of page 15, that's the highway budget, 1449123, and the bottom number on page 13, 1250454, and then you subtract, you find that that number does not include the 60,000 for the law enforcement, or the $7,000 for the Article 17 for the West West Library. So the math shows that even though those two, that item is in the budget of 60,000, it's not total in the amount that's shown in Article 16 that we passed.
Thank you for that math. Okay, any further questions or comments?
Charlie Hutchison, I'm going to go where nobody else seems to want to tread because I'm not running for any, well, I am running for office, school board. But anyway, I'm going to propose raising this amount of money. So I propose an amendment that it's clear the sense of the meeting is that 60 grand is simply not enough to do the job once we find the right people to do it. So I would amend the motion to permitting the school board, the select board to spend up to 120,000 for the provision of services of coverage. Police coverage.
Okay, Charlie Hutchinson has proposed an amendment to change the sum in this article to 120,000, or say actually have it be worded up to $120,000. So then the motion would read, shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate the up to the sum of $120,000 for law enforcement coverage, period. Is there a second to that amendment? All kinds of seconds. I'll go with Karen Blanchard right here. Okay. Then any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, which would change the motion to read, shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate up to the sum of $120,000 for law enforcement coverage. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. I'm going to say the ayes have it. And the motion, the amendment carries. That means we're on to the main motion, pretty much what I just read. And any further comments, questions about the main motion? Okay, then the main motion is Article 18, shall the voters of the town of Westminster raise and appropriate this up to the sum of $120,000 for law enforcement coverage. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and the motion, Article 18, passes. Article 19, shall the voters of the town of Westminster authorize all surplus balances from the FEMA Storm Fund of the July 29, 2021 storm event to be transferred to the general fund with $200,000 to be used to reduce fiscal year 2024 taxes to be raised. What is your pleasure?
Nathan DeGaul, I move Article 19 as written.
Nathan moves Article 19 as written. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster authorize all surplus balances from the FEMA Storm Fund of the July 29, 2021 storm event to be transferred to the general fund with $200,000 to be used to reduce FY 2024 taxes to be raised? Is there a second? Okay. Sarah is seconded. Okay. Any comments, questions? Yes. Why don't we go with Martha Mitchell?
I'm Martha Mitchell. I would like to know why this money isn't left in the highway fund. It's my recollection that Westminster has something like 20 miles of paved road and 70 miles of dirt road. And for those of us who live on gravel roads, we could surely use some more crushed rock. I know a lot of roads last spring were completely impassable, including my own. Why is this being put into the general fund when it was for, I believe the FEMA stuff was for damage that was done to the road system?
It was taken out from the fund to use for that storm, and so we're putting it back to reduce taxes. That's the only reason.
Why doesn't it stay in, instead of reducing taxes, why don't we leave it to improve the dirt roads that are truly a mess at this time of year?
$200,000 wouldn't even begin to cover it. It'd put a dent in it, but it wouldn't begin to cover it.
That's my point. So we reduce taxes now and then we pay more later.
Okay, let's go to Adrian Major.
Thanks. I have a similar comment and inquiry. It seems to me that this money was appropriated in order to help us with our roads. And my particular question is why not put it in our bridge fund, since you've said that the bridges are going to be an expense as we're moving forward, and this seems to be a sensible thing to do with it. So I would, I'm not going to vote against the motion to move it into general funds, but I strongly advise the select board to put those monies in general funds towards bridges or roads.
So the body can move to put that money anywhere they wanted to. That's why it's a separate, we used it to reduce taxes. If you so choose to move it somewhere else, you certainly could do that.
Okay, let's see. I think Mr. Boslin hasn't spoken in a while.
Yeah, hi, Ron Boslin. I was wondering about that contingency fund. So it seems to me, so we have some options. So and I'm not a financial guy to know what the right motion is to do with it, but some version of whether it's bridge or roads or contingency seems smarter to me than reducing taxes in this instance, because we will just pay more later.
Thank you, Mr. Boslin. Why don't we go over to Peggy O'Toole?
Hi, Peggy O'Toole. I'm just wondering, what is the balance of all the surplus balances from the FEMA storm fund? The way it reads, I understand 200,000 of that is to reduce taxes. What's the remaining portion of that?
Good question. Select board?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I defer to Chip on that.
Chip is inquired.
Presently, the fund balance is $232,869.95. We still anticipate anywhere from $150,000 to 225,000 more to come back as reimbursements. So this article says to take all of it. Some of it we haven't even received yet. So the opportunity to fund bridges, roads, and all that can take place because there's more yet to come.
Thank you, Jim. Let's go with Natalie right here.
I'd like to propose an amendment, and so the article would read something like, that the Town of Westminster authorize all surplus balances from the FEMA Storm Fund of July 29th, 2021 storm event to be transferred to fix dirt roads or bridges according to the expertise of the Select Board.
Okay, so Natalie's proposed an amendment, and it was seconded by Molly Bannock to essentially change the wording to all funds in the FEMA storm fund, and all surplus funds in the FEMA storm fund, and use those to fix dirt roads or bridges according to the expertise of the Select Board. Did I get that right, Natalie?
I had the date in there, and I said, I didn't say all funds, I think I used the 200,000 figure. I said all funds. Okay.
You said all funds,
Okay,
yeah.
then I'll
Pretty
stick
soon.
with
But
what
you did say they were
said.
related to
Yeah.
the storm.
Yeah,
And
related to the storm.
right, and that was seconded by Molly. So, did you get that, Pauline? Absolutely not. Okay.
Hey, Dave?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, if you just turned down the 200, it would go back to the general fund and the select board could use it in the manner that you're asking. It doesn't have to be earmarked. So all we would have to do is just say, no, don't take the 200, let it go back and stay in general fund.
But would it be used that way?
It would be used by the select board and they would have a choice no matter what.
It would be unrestricted, though, I believe.
Yeah.
Not specific for, I don't know how you would do that.
Okay, I believe that what Craig is saying is that if the original motion were voted, we all voted no on the original motion, then the surplus funds would go into the general fund and could be used for whatever the select board deemed necessary. But did I get that right, Craig?
That's what I believe so. I guess Chip could correct me, but I believe that's what we're here is we're asking to take 200 to lower taxes. If you don't, it leaves back in the general fund, and then the new select board, notice I say that, they can spend it more wisely than the last select board did to fix the roads.
A little humble comment from Craig Allen. Okay, but nevertheless, we have an amendment that was proposed, it was seconded, so we need to vote on that, but first we need to make sure we understand what it is. Molly.
Amend that article.
Right.
So with
Gave the specific place to go.
I'm sorry, I think I know a little bit about what we're doing here, but I'm not understanding, you're telling me if we amend the motion and that amendment gets passed, that we're going back to the original motion, but the original motion is going to be what the amendment was. So how does that $200,000 go back to the general fund? I don't understand what Craig just said.
Craig was really not speaking to the amendment. He was speaking to an alternative course of action, which right now is hypothetical because we are discussing the amendment.
Greg, don't stir me. We're working on the amendment right now, correct?
Correct.
I'm sorry, but
And I'm going to attempt to read the motion as I understand it would be with the amendment.
Thank you.
Shall the voters, this is Article 19, shall the voters of the town of Westminster authorize all surplus balances from the FEMA Storm Fund of July 29, 2021 to be transferred to the general fund to fix dirt roads or bridges according to the expertise of the select board. That's my understanding of how the article is changed according to amendment. Does that, am I correct, Natalie Crocker?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion on this amendment? Lots of further discussion. Why don't we go with team right down here?
Sorry, Team VLC. I just would, could there be an additional thing that says under the, to include consultation with the highway department? Not that I don't believe the select board has extreme expertise in this area, but I think that we need to make sure that the right things are being done at the right time, and it would just be nice to have that stipulation in there.
In addition to the amendment.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. That
Yes.
would be an amendment to an amendment.
Yeah, you can't.
That would be an amendment to the minutes. Correct. Although I'm going to ask Team and Molly, who made and seconded that motion, whether they would accept a friendly change in the wording to say, according to the expertise of the select board and the highway department.
Am I being asked that question?
Yes.
Yes, that'd be fine.
Would that be all right, Molly? Okay. So that means that then that we'll just change that wording. Okay. I'm going to go over to the left here and go with Mr. Streeter.
Cole Streeter. Are we putting ourselves in a bad place if we have a paved road get washed out? We can't use those funds, sorry. That's for dirt roads and bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Streeter, who lives on a paved road. Okay, why don't we go over again over here to Katie Dearborn.
I guess I want to provide a little bit of clarity. So we were talking originally about $200. We then, $200,000. We now have an amendment that's talking about the full surplus, correct?
Correct.
Which we heard is, money is continuing to come in. We have it very specific for dirt roads and bridges. All of that money, only dirt roads and bridges, okay? I think we need to be mindful that we do have a highway department, we do have a select board, and I think if we truly want to have the surplus money from FEMA be under their discretion, all we want to do is basically not say that we want to have any amount of money earmarked for anything, because whatever the surplus is goes into the general and they can do what they want to do with it. So if we're looking to have something very specific in what you're looking to have the money spent for, that certainly could be the motion, but I think we're kind of going in circles at this point. I think that if we have the motion that's on the floor right now withdrawn and we vote down the original motion, then any surplus money that's there is under their discretion, and I can assure you they'd work directly with the highway department to make that happen.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, any further?
I can withdraw my amendment.
Why don't I ask Ian whether that amendment can be withdrawn? Yes. Okay. Parliamentarian says yes, you can withdraw the amendment. If, I assume if that's okay with the person who seconded. Okay.
Yes.
Molly, would you?
So, I understand what everybody's saying about not really putting it towards one or two things. But I do feel pretty passionate that it ought to go back into the highway funds, wherever that is, just because that was what that money was to begin with. But, you know, I'm only one in the hall, so.
Okay.
I will withdraw my second, but I'm not comfortable with it. I don't think it should go in the general fund.
Okay, thank you, Molly. So we're going to go back to the main motion, and the amendment having been withdrawn. And the main motion reads, Article 19, shall the voters of the town of Westminster authorize all surplus balances from the FEMA Storm Fund of July 29, 2021 storm event to be transferred to the general fund with $200,000 to be used to reduce FY 2024 taxes to be raised. Any further thoughts on this Article 19? Let's see, why don't we go to Rachel Cohen?
I just want to make sure I understand, if we vote this down, what's the restriction on this money, if any?
If we vote this down, the surplus goes into the general fund, as I understand it, and there is no restriction. Am I correct, Select Board?
I believe so.
Why don't we, let's see, Charlie, you've had your hand up for a while. Right, Charlie Hutchinson.
Charlie Hutchison, I sympathize with the original motion, but I think it's been superseded by subsequent discussion, so I'd like to call the question.
The question's been called. Is there a second? Yes, second over here from Mr. Crocker. So, all those in favor of calling the question say aye. Aye. All those opposed to calling the question, nay. Oh boy, let's do that. Let's do that over again. All those in favor of calling the question say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. I'm going to say that 2/3 said aye. So the question's been called. So we go right to a vote of Article 19. Shall the voters of the town of Westminster authorize all surplus balances from the FEMA Storm Fund of the July 29, 2021 storm event to be transferred to the general fund with $200,000 to be used to reduce FY 2024 taxes to be raised? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. I would say the nays do have it, and the article is turned down. Okay, Article 20, to transact any other business to be brought before the Town of Westminster meeting. Any other business? Yes, back here. Lisa.
Hi, Lisa Sparrow, and great gratitude to our select board and to everybody who's been so thoughtful. I'm sorry to torture you with having to talk about one more thing, but the select board recommended that I bring this to the town meeting for discussion. It's something that ultimately the select board itself will decide, but they wanted to be sure that everybody had a chance to weigh in. I have no idea how you feel about it, but I don't know how many of you know, but there is a movement across Vermont to have different towns, organizations, municipalities come up with what are called declarations of inclusion. Those have different wording, but basically they all say about the same thing. I'm going to read the one that was just passed in February for the town of Jamaica after a lot of back and forth. So this would be a sample, so I'm not saying that Westminster would use the same words. In fact, there's a sort of a template that towns can use. But this is what it sounds like. The town of Jamaica condemns in the strongest terms any effort to spread targeted messages of hate that are designed to induce fear in any member of our community. Hateful speech aimed at any member of our community will not be tolerated. Happily, Jamaica is a diverse and vibrant community. We support all of the members of our community who engage in peaceful demonstrations and constructive dialogue. As a town, we welcome all persons, regardless of race, color, religion, socioeconomic status, national origin, gender identity, age, or disability. We condemn discrimination in all its forms and will strive to ensure all our actions, policies, and operating procedures reflect this commitment. So that's what I'm bringing to our select board. I would love to think that everybody thought it was a no-duh, but maybe it's not. So I don't know how you want to proceed, but that's my.
So is it any motion or vote by this body under this article is non-binding because it was not warned. However, a vote certainly can be taken by the body, and that goes as I assume as a recommendation to the select board, or potentially to the next annual meeting. But it depends on. Would you like to make a motion, or would you just like to make a statement?
Okay. I have no idea what I want to do. Whichever you recommend. It really, I will say from my work with other towns, and I am a resident of Westminster West, so this has personal meaning, but I have worked in other towns with this, is that some towns really haggle over this, every single word. Other towns just take it and say, of course. So it's really, I really don't know. I'll make a motion. Should I make a motion? And it's non-binding.
It's non-binding, so the wording can be changed.
Okay, so non-binding motion. So should you want me to put that into words?
Yes.
Okay. How do you know what I think till I hear what I say, right? Yeah, and I put a whole bunch of these back in the back, just so you know, so if people are interested in more details, you can take them home. So I would like to move that the select board take up the question of making a declaration of inclusion.
Okay, Lisa Stroud-Patman would like to move that the select board take up the question of making a declaration of inclusion. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Pauline, do you have that? Okay. Is there a second? Many seconds. Why don't we go with Matt Conklin over here? Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, and I will just reiterate that that will be a recommendation to the select board, and the select board will be able to discuss it and take action if they wish to, with the guidance from this body. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Any other business to be brought before the town? Yes, Mr. Tony Coven.
There are many reports from different organizations and agencies that do business with the town. I have not been able to find one from Golden Cross Ambulance. I'm curious if the select board has any question about that.
Report from Golden Cross Ambulance. I see Allie raising her hand over there, and unless there's any objection, maybe Allie could speak to that.
I called Golden Cross when we were getting ready to do budgeting to see if they were going to increase their rates. They are not comfortable signing a contract with us because they don't know if they're going to be defunct. So that's why it isn't in the budget. We are going to continue to pay them. That was kind of a agreement that they would not let us down, but they just didn't want to do a contract. COVID really messed with them. Lack of help, lack of volunteers, that kind of thing. Not as lucky as fire district number 3. But yeah, so that's why it's not in the budget.
Thank you. Okay, I can't see who that is, but out back there. Jim Comptons.
Yeah, speaking to the Golden Cross event, something has to get done by the select board to get somebody else in here. Because recently, probably a week ago, the closest ambulance to us was either Alstead, Keene, or Bradford. That's a problem, especially during 121 construction. My end of the town, that's 20 minutes or longer for ambulance to come from Alstead. So I think at this point, like select board, to look into getting Golden Cross the route and get somebody else in here that can do the job. Or we take a stipend and we pay all holes since they live over here, it seems lately, and they're all volunteer. And I would not really actually like to be one of them because those guys go home most weeks probably without a 40-hour paycheck because they spend a lot of time in the ambulances. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other business to be brought before the town?
End this session.
My dad is bugging me to end the meeting. But Molly has her hand up back there. Molly.
A lot of times we agree to disagree, Craig Allen, but thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Craig. And that, I think, will be it. Good to see you all, and...
Motion to adjourn?
No, recess.
Oh, we are not adjourning. We are going to recess till Tuesday, 10 o'clock, when the ballots, and when we vote at the fire station. And I'm also getting something else from Katrina. I'm good. Great. And we're all good. Okay. Safe home.